Radio Okitalk, Radio Okitalk, von Mensch zu Mensch.
Welcome to the Wyzard of Odd edition 14 with Bryan, Lahr. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Welcome.
Who's the craziest one of all? Hey, how are you, Raphael? Good to be back. And this is a crazy day already, man. It should be a good one. So, we're going to talk about magic mirrors today. One of my absolute favorite metaphysical tools. And, I've gotten so many questions lately from people going, well, how do I get a teacher? How do I go? I want to find somebody to learn from. How do I do that? So I thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking about that as well. And
talking about how your own mirror is your best teacher. Pun intended.
Yeah, well, that's that is a viable perspective for sure. and talking about your best teacher, the last show we did was I was kind of relating my experience of connecting with my ally, and I got very long-winded and talked through the entire show. And you said you had some questions and some comments about that. I don't know if you still do. I thought we could, start with that if you wanted, and if not, we can dive right into mirrors. What's your pleasure?
Right, that's a question actually, because we had discussed some of the ideas in terms of telepathy and different of these types of experiences. However, at this point, I would just recommend everyone to go listen back to the show, which in this case is edition 13, Wyzard of Oz, Bryan, Lahr, Guardian
13.
Angel.
Lucky number.
Yes. So I'd say everyone ideally just go listen back to that. It's true, you talked quite a lot, but you basically condensed, in some senses, even years of experience, or even if it's just, days of experience.
Decades, actually.
Right. But even if we would just use the days of the actual, like encounters or something, even here, I think you summarized many, many hours of actual experience into, a quite short and sweet package of just 2 hours. So I think it's good.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, let's dive. Okay. Your pleasure. Teachers or mirrors first?
All right, then I'd say let's start with the teachers.
Okay. So, before we get rambling into how to find one, I found it kind of curious that the term teacher has taken on kind of a negative connotation almost, and it's like, oh, I don't need a teacher. It's kind of like this attitude about like a teacher isn't somebody that's there to give you gifts, but a teacher is somebody that's an authoritarian figure that needs to be revolted against, and I just
which in many cases is not too untrue, I guess.
Well, I guess that's true. We're not really referring to when you're a kid and you're in school, that can definitely be the definition of some teachers, but that's kind of like enforced on you, inflicted on you. This mode is finding someone who has already gone down the path that you deeply desire to go down, and show you some of the shortcuts and the secret way through the path where you might not stub your toe as many times. And, you know, I don't believe that anything a teacher could show you, well, almost anything, could show you is something that, you know, you couldn't get to yourself with enough time and, you know, enough trial runs and enough desire to go after it. But, you know, having someone that is already a master of a technique or an ability that you really want is such an amazing exchange, you know, and I will forever be a student. That's my favorite thing to be, you know, but I enjoy teaching also. And, you know, I've had a number of different kinds of teachers over my lifetime. Really, really early, I had an amazing mentor that, well, his name's Ron Seacrest. He runs, now he does, it's a worldwide school for creatives and advertising, photography, that kind of stuff, and that's how I got my intro into that. And he was, you know, I'm a very difficult, hard-headed, opinionated person, and I don't, you know, give up my own point of view or open myself to other people's points of view all that easily, you know. And this guy, like, had my respect from day one, and you know, I enjoy learning from teachers that are doing what they're teaching, not just talking about it, you know. And a lot of scholastic scenarios, you know, teachers are telling you about things, but a lot of them don't really have much skill in that area. So anyway, this guy woke me up to the nut of creativity and how to get to my creative center and to apply that then to any discipline you wanted to do, whether that was magic or painting or drawing or design or, you know, TV production. And that gift, man, I use that every single day. That is, you know, that was like early 20s for me, and now that thing has wound up being a doorway to the most amazing experiences of my life. So he was just a genius on so many levels. As a matter of fact, he just had his birthday. I think he was 87, and still going strong, man. That guy's indestructible. So anyway, after I cruised out into, you know, kind of the commercial world, advertising world, and did that for a long time. You know, in my early 30s, I like decided that it was time to find my magical mentor. And I ran into, you know, I had not really participated in any metaphysical groups or lodges or anything like that. It was just me. So I, you know, kind of put it out there to the universe that I really would love to find someone to learn from. And, you know, it was a short time later, about a month later. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and, you know, that was the time of the big psychers, and they had this huge psychic fair down at the Georgia Coliseum. And there was a guy there that I met that was doing palm readings, and I was there with a girl, and he looked at my palm and he goes, "Boy, you have a lot to learn that you're gonna enjoy," and like went off on like this whole scenario of exactly what I had been thinking of. And then the girl that I was with was next, and she got this reading, and she was all pissed off because he didn't talk about her as long as he did me. And so anyway, he wound up being kind of a teacher in that he didn't really show me techniques and effects, and he had no projective abilities, but he was a really amazing psychic, tarot reader, and a over-the-top palm reader. So he started showing me a bunch of stuff, however, he was really well versed in lots of different magical disciplines and had an amazing library. He invited me up to his house. He lived down here in Florida, and after I moved to Florida, I wound up contacting him, took a day trip up to go see him, and he just had the most amazing library. I just spent like 30, 45 minutes going, oh my God, this is crazy cool. Had books that I had just seen in bibliographies and never been able to find. And it turned into just this eye-opening, like a buffet of, hey, you might want to try this out. And since I hadn't really, I didn't have a broad scope of even what was out there at that time, it was awesome to like get all these intros into different flavors of the way things done. And it made it really easy for me to kind of focus on some parts of the path that I felt especially called to, and felt like I could really invest myself in doing. His name was James Tucker. He died about 10 years ago, and the Mystic Oracle. I'm eternally grateful to James. And when James died, the night James died, there was a swarm of fireflies. I walked outside my front door into the garden, and there was this swarm of swirling fireflies in kind of an egg-shaped oval that they were just spinning around in a circle. And I got his voice coming out of that swarm, and ever since then, attached, every time I see a firefly, I have a little talk with him. So anyway, he was a really amazing teacher. And then I got into the whole Afro-Cuban Ifa thing, and that guy was really, really intense. And that whole experience was really, really intense, and it turned out in really a super ugly way that wound up being really nasty. And he and I are no longer in contact, haven't been for some time. And it was after that I went, this call to doing projective work, healings, telekinesis, materialization, those kind of things were always a deep call for me, like always. And I didn't, you're taught so much that those are not really possibilities, that those are just fantasies and cool fantasy movies, but that real life, that couldn't happen. But I decided to see if I could find somebody that actually could do it, and then two, could teach me how to do it. So I wound up doing a really intense ritual to bring that person to me and let it go. And, where the first one, I found James in about a month, pretty quick. This one went on for a couple of years, and I still hadn't hooked up. I was getting really frustrated and discouraged, and I was like, man, where is it? And other alternatives sort of would show up, but it was like, no, this is a whole different direction. It was more like a distraction rather than a help. So out of the blue, this woman that I was dating, she was an amazing script supervisor in movies, and she was on a set with somebody who was working on that in the crew, and they were having a conversation, and she was a little magical being. And they started having a metaphysical talk, and it turns out that this guy had a teacher that could do all of the things that I was really trying to get to do. And, it's funny because there was you hear stories a lot, but I'm always interested, and if it's about something I'm really passionate about, I'll connect to it. But I always keep this part of me that's like, okay, well, let's see. It's a part of me that grew up in Missouri, the show me state, right? So
Right.
I started. We were having a conversation one night, this woman and I, and she was talking about this guy, and so I wind up connecting with him, and he and I struck up kind of a conversation, or and a relationship, and visit. I at that point had a few things I could do, kind of on command, and he came up a bunch of times to the house, and we did stuff. So I was like, dude, you got to hook me up with your teacher. So I wound up having. He was very guarded and jealous about making that connection. He wanted to keep that like step away from me for the longest time. And I just kept at it and at it and at it and at it. And finally, I guess this is about 4.5 years. He finally relents, and I wind up. He hooked up a meeting with all of us, and I wound up finally getting to meet him, and I was like, man, I'm glad you stayed on this, because he did a couple of little minor effects that kind of blew my mind, but the energy that was happening from him was different than anyone I had ever met at that time. So I was doing the tap dance, trying to get him to teach me. And at this point, I think I'm in my mid to late 40s. And, that's way too late, to be. Usually this kind of training starts 17, 18, your 20s. And, it's for a number of reasons, but mainly one, your physical condition, and whether your actual physical body can sustain the rigors of some of the projective practice, because it is rather taxing in some places. And then two, it's that usually by the time you're 45, 46, you're so entrenched in your beliefs already that opening somebody to new possibilities and being able to silence their own inner skeptic is very, very difficult. So I wound up just tap dancing with him for about 5 years. And it wasn't until we struck up a friendship, and I was talking to him. He always has a screening process that I didn't really understand at the time, and he will try to make somebody that's asking to be taught kind of like go away, like at least 3 or 4 times. And if you keep coming back after that, then he knows you're passionate enough to actually have the dedication and the diligence to actually do something with your abilities. So I was not going away, man. It was just not even an option. I was not going away. So we had struck up a cool friendship, and then that whole hospital thing that I've described too many times already, and that was our first connection into him actually like acquiescing. And, yeah, okay, here you go. Lose 100 pounds, and then I will teach you that first effect. And I jumped on that and never looked back. And that's been 12 years now, and you form a really special bond of love and connection, with someone that opens doors to the universe to you, and shows you things that you really had wanted to learn. But a few of the things, many of the things that he's shown me, I probably could have gotten to, but instead of a couple months, it would have been years and years of going, So he gave me this treasure chest full of gifts and jewels that, man, I'm eternally grateful for. And this is another thing for him. Money and the metaphysical wind up being kind of a gray area for me. When money starts getting attached to teaching, it's like, well, are you really teaching me because you believe in me, or is it, a paycheck kind of thing? And I mean, there are so many levels of how money changes the dynamic of any situation,
Yeah, and I guess especially as you pointed out initially with the whole idea or question of the teacher, also here it's about, what is money? What is the definition of energy? How is it being viewed and treated and communicated? Certainly, let's say an old or controlling notion of money does not correspond well with the idea of a positively polarized magic, obviously.
Well, I've encountered so many elements of, people charging for readings and charging for the everything, And one of the things that just knocked me on my butt with this was there's no money involved. There's no payment. He's never asked me for a single cent in remuneration. He did it because he wanted to do it. Now he's always, and I've adopted this line in my own thing when I find people I want to, connect with and show stuff to. There isn't a financial cost, but there is a price to it, and that is your effort and your, actually working on it and accomplishing something. Which is only fair since somebody's giving you a huge amount of their time because they want to see you progress and evolve. I mean, it's only fair that you put in the requisite effort to actually go after what you were asking for. So that's always been and I don't charge my clients. I did a couple podcasts that there was money involved in, but I'm not doing that right now because I don't know, it's never really felt right. I don't mind making money from the products of my magic, like selling my tarot decks and my angel deck. I think that's an awesome way to do stuff, and even charging a little bit for readings. And it's funny because I've tried doing it where I did readings for free, and when you do readings for free, and the high end of what I've charged for readings is $400, and like that's just insane to me. But that the person that I asked for that from, I mean, they put more value in it. It's like I notice when I don't charge for the readings, it's like it's not really worth anything to not everybody, but a large percentage of people.
Yeah, this is a really tricky psychological question, right? Unfortunately, still, that it seems for many individuals within their conscious minds, value still is attached to a price tag, and they are not yet completely able to discern value independently of that particular number, let's say.
Right. And it's like the more you pay, the more you're charging for it, the more credence they put in it, or like
right.
value you do to it, which I just that's never tasted good to me and never really felt good to me. And the Afro-Cubans, the Ifa time I spent in that, money is attached to everything. Head prayers, readings,
Really?
cleaning. Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh my word! It costs to get your saints. It costs.
Well,
like,
they learned something from the Catholic Church for sure, huh?
Oh, dude, are you kidding? Tithe me, baby. Yeah. So, that's been a really amazing thing. So, in the I'd love to share after I got to know my teacher, and we've shared stories about our personal. Like, I probably know him better than I know anybody at this point. His story about meeting his teacher is kind of crazy and similar in a way too. He was very young, 17, and he'd been practicing since he was a small boy. He was just one of those people that was born to do that. And he had gotten to that same place where it was like, man, I need a teacher. I need a teacher to show me the things I want to go to. I need a freaking teacher. So he did a really major ritual for that as well. And it turns out that his actual teacher, he actually met in a park, and then later on in a church when he was like 12, 13 years old, and never really thought anything about it. And he does this ritual, and this is about 2-3 months later, and he's pissed off because it hasn't happened yet. So he winds up getting really drunk, and he's like shit-faced drunk. And all of a sudden he has this really intense blast in his head to just get in a taxi. And he gets in a taxi, shit-faced, gives the guy a bunch of money, and he says, just go drive. And the taxi driver winds up taking off, and they're just driving around. He's just drunk in the back of a taxi driving around. And the guy pulls up in front of this really large mansion, gated mansion, and stops. And my teacher gets out of the car. For some reason, there's push to get out of the car, and he doesn't see anybody through the gate yet. And he turns around to talk to the cab driver and tells him to drive away. It's like, what? And why? Okay. So then he turns back around, and his teacher is standing in the gateway and inviting him in. And his first words to him are, "What took you so long?"
Nice.
And from that moment on, he, the first 9 months of the training, you live with your teacher, and it's a really intense scenario. So that day, he moved into his teacher's house and started his training, and that was, God, wow, many decades ago. And I've been lucky enough to have contact with his teacher also. And one of the things that my teacher's name is Augie, and one of the things we laugh about all the time is, like, it's funny, that people come to you and they're looking for something you know how to do, and the process of breaking what you're doing down into terms that are graspable by another person, you always learn more. And it's so funny that the teacher, I taught advertising for a long time, and it was the same thing there, where it's like the teacher always learns more than the student. So in my mind, that's one of the greatest tools and helps any serious practitioner can go for, and I would say that the best way to approach that is to have passion about what you want to go get, and then with really strong intent, send that idea in whatever ritual, however sigil, however you want to send that out to the universe, and be patient. Sometimes those happen fast. I don't know of those happening very fast. I think this is just an opinion, but in looking at the multiplicity of situations that I know people have done exactly that, even my teacher, myself, I was like, it took me years. And, I think the universe goes, okay, registered, before I fulfill that one, I think I'd like to see how serious you really are about that. And if you can get distracted in a month or 2 months or even a year or 2 years, like with me, I never gave that up. I stayed with that intent and desire, and I kept sending that out to the universe. And I think at some point it decided I was actually serious, and that would be a good thing to do. Because
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, persistence certainly, just as balance, persistence certainly is key. And what comes to mind for me is, of course, one could see it in a sense of, the universe, which is yourself, of course, testing you whether you're serious. The other perspective is, Bashar calls it the threshold of believability. And that is the idea you want to manifest whatever it is in your life, whatever circumstance. And then you can ask yourself, if I would say this would happen in 20 years, is that enough time for that to happen? Most people would say, in 20 years, anything can happen. Sure. Then you ask 10 years. Sure. 5 years. Sure. 2 years. Maybe. Yeah. And that's kind of in that logic, how how likely it is within your own mind in this present moment that something could occur within a certain time frame. So whether you are doubting that time frame or not, which of course is just an arbitrary illusory construction of the mind anyhow.
I wanted the results the next day.
Oh yeah, totally. The question would be, in a sense, whether at that point you were already completely ready, let's say, to believe that this would happen totally. This would be question number one, aspect number one. And aspect number two would be the idea that then the higher self registers, like you says, your desire and may cue it, but at the same time may also discern, okay, because of course it's operating on a higher level, so it can discern all the other things you may actually want to experience first in a different state before you reach that, or other stepping stone foundational aspects or other things to integrate, so that you can then actually fully enjoy that idea which you have honed into and put a target mark on.
Very, very possible. Yes, absolutely.
So actually, I could just ask, would you say that this would be accurate in your case, that there were certain things you are happy now that you learned first before you got fully into it and before you got introduced to your teacher in this way or started the training in this way?
I don't think I would change a thing unless I could meet my teacher when I was 17. But to be honest with you, the person I was then, I don't think was ready. When I look back, I was physically ready. I was smart. I was in good shape, and but emotionally and character wise, I'm happy for the growing I did before I got to the gems. Also, I don't know how you were when you were a kid like that, but I didn't put the same value on things then that are of real value, and every single little tidbit I've gotten from my teacher, I have respect for and value on a very real level. And I don't think I had the emotional maturity to do that then. I'm sure other people probably do, but I don't think that was one of my strong suits at that point. And I think that had I met him and busted out into the kinds of things I've been learning, which in an abstract way, it's kind of like a gun. I mean, do you give an emotionally immature kid a loaded pistol that can actually kill somebody or do damage? Fuck no. And in a lot of ways, what you're learning here has the potential to be harmful if you choose to go that way. And I'm I'm really happy that I was in the emotional level that I was at, and you know what, and it's funny, synchronistically, the way it lined up. You know, I was in the parking lot of the emergency room when my teacher called me, you know, for that momentous call, and started everything rolling. You know, so I was 50 years old at that time, and you know, I had kind of given up on finding my teacher at that point. I'd let it go. I was like, okay, this isn't going to happen this time. And, you know, you don't gain all that weight without some part of you just really having given up and ready to check out, you know? And, you know, so that's cleansing of the blackboard, wiping the slate absolutely clean, letting that person that I was at that moment die, and taking the you know, sifting through the ashes to build the person I wanted to be from that time, was the perfect moment to begin that training and to start adding that to my life. And it's not just like something I do on the outside, you know, after I do everything else in my life. It's kind of the core of my life that then everything else revolves around. So it really transformed my way of living in every single direction, you know. Eat food to keep my body and machine good, and to replenish the things I need to do to continue my practice. And you know, it all revolves around that now. And I don't think when I was a kid that I had that kind of discipline or that kind of ability too. So kind of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that did.
Yeah, for sure. And we are back with the Wizard of Oz edition 14. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?
The wacko of all. Yeah, there you go. You know, I came to terms a long time ago about being viewed as crazy, you know, and I just don't care. Which is a really free and happy space for me. You know, it's crazy you were playing that piece of music. Love that piece of music. I'm so excited about working on this project with you, and like, you know, I can't believe we've done 14 episodes already, you know, kind of amazing. I know you've done hundreds with Team Rabbit Hole, but this is kind of a cool thing, and it's sort of like a sculpture we're getting to make over time and shape, and watching it grow and come to fruition has been a real treat. Actually, I'm super grateful, man. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, totally. I'm also very stoked. On Team Rabbit Hole, currently we only have 90 episodes, but there we also have, you know, crazy amounts of guests and so on. But let's say I'm very happy and not surprised that we keep this going. And I guess, you know, there's probably, you know, no expectations, but most likely more iterations and things to come.
Yes, I think so too. You know, you gave me a great little inspiration thing the other day. You know, you were talking about, you know, would I like to come up with a song for the show opener, man. I like did a little Snoopy dance around the room. Woohoo! and I've got a badass piece of music written, but I've written words that I wanted to make happen like about 6 or 7 times, and at the end of it, I'm like, nah, man, that's just not right. So while you were playing that music, my song has kind of a similar drum groove to it and beat to it, and I wound up writing all of the words for the song. I'm like so stoked, man. I'm gonna jump off of the show when we wrap up, and
so it's gonna have lyrics as well, or how can I imagine this?
Lyrics, but highly affected ones, so that they're sound textures until they hear it a couple of times. It would be cool. I think you'll dig it. Yeah, I think you'll really dig it. And if not, I'll do something else. Oh yeah. So magic mirrors, you know, if you think about it, that's probably one of the oldest metaphysical tools ever, since the first time our hominid ancestors leaned over a pool of water and saw their own reflection. I think it's probably been used since then. And I have over the years seen hundreds of different iterations of this tool. And, a lot of people think about it mainly as a scrying device, being able to see into the past or future, or I know a number of people that use them for past life regressions. I know one woman that has a closet in her house that's painted black with a mirror in it. And she goes and sits in that with no light on, just the mirror, and has come out of there with some crazy, crazy cool things. So, the uses for that go far beyond just scrying. One of my favorite tools for moving into doing work where you're learning to see your aura, just as reference, when I started my training, I could perceive just that thinnest white line that just kind of like goes around your body, all over your body, about an inch and a half wide. I don't know about you, but when I was in school, in elementary school, and you're looking at the teacher in the afternoon, I always used to get kind of sleepy, man. I'd be drifting off a little bit and kind of dazed out. And if she was standing back, up so that a blank blackboard was behind her, I could always, and it was one particular teacher too, by the way, which I've contemplated the curiosity of that thing many times, but I would see this weird little glow just right around the outside of her. And I thought that was kind of because, my eyes were starting to close. I always wrote that off. But I realized that at that time, that was really the level of seeing that I could accomplish, and that I was actually seeing the very first band of the aura. So, when I started my mirror, I used a mirror to look at myself and try to see an aura. It's like trying to find somebody else to do that with is cool, but they're not going to want to sit there for the amount of time that, especially it took me at the beginning. I didn't fall into that very easily. And I wound up focusing on really mainly my head in the mirror, and I'm back away from it. It was a tall mirror, so it was probably 6 feet tall, and so I could get my whole body, and I was back from it, so I wasn't huge in the mirror, and I was looking at just my head, focusing on just my head, and I decided to focus on. And instead of just observing, I decided to focus on the white band and to try to make it brighter. So
here we go, making the white band so bright that we actually get a reconnection. And here you're back again.
Oh, did you lose me?
Yes, you were just dropping. You were talking about expanding the white band, and that apparently cranked up the frequency so much that you have to reconnect.
Yeah, that's so funny. Wow. All right. Okay, keep it in. All right. So I was able to crank up that band so that it was at least twice as bright. And start to move it out away from my body a little bit. So I practiced on that for a couple of weeks and was getting pretty proficient at, but like lighting that up. And I was really happy about that. But I was like, wow, that's really a small aura, man. What the hell is going on? I knew at that time there were other bands, but I wasn't able to see those yet. And as I just continued on, all of a sudden I started seeing this little band of blue just outside the edge of the white, and it was kind of interacting with that, not unlike you see the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis, the way it's kind of like in motion. You know, it's kinetic and moving together. You know, the colors are kind of moving together. So right at that edge, it was blending. It wasn't just a solid edge, and I stayed on that for a couple of weeks, and was able to focus on that and increase that. And then after that, that's, you know, your second band is your emotional band, which is usually the largest band that you have. Like when you're just at rest and you're not like in the middle of doing something, that usually extends 18 to like 24 inches out from you. And the predominant color of that, you know, it's like when you reach out and you do a look-see at somebody else's aura, and you get a flavor of, oh, wow, they're really orange, or in my case, wow, he's really blue. It's because that band of the aura is so much brighter than all the other ones, and it winds up, and it's the most intense, because that's where you're pouring every emotional reaction you have to every piece of input that you get throughout your entire day and your night if you dream really heavily. So I was able to expand that out a good 6-8 inches, and I was having this really, your abilities go with the flow. You know, some days you're on, some days you're not so on, some days you're like over the top. And I was having one of those just amazing days where everything I did like kind of went right, and I was able to accomplish a bunch of stuff in way less time. And I open up the mirror thing, I'm doing the look-see, and I get it out to a good 8 inches, and it's brighter than I'd ever seen it. And I was just like, woohoo! And right as I went, woohoo! Like the rest of the aura lit up. Like, what? What? And I could not believe, and I was so shocked that it sort of like blasted me out of my astrovision, and it kind of went away. And I went, oh, man. And I tried to get back to it. And to be honest with you, I was so excited about seeing the other bands that I couldn't calm myself down enough to get back to that. So after I went back the next day, and there they were, and they were bloomed out. The third band was pretty bright, but the fourth, fifth, and man, I really couldn't detect the sixth band yet. But the fourth and the fifth band were there enough for me to be able to know they were there and get glimpses of them, but they weren't bright yet. But the first, second, and third band were just like on fire. And that's when I started, like, you know, one of the great things about astral world is that, you know, you can, when you're in your vision, you can zoom in and macro, or you can zoom out or zoom in and micro, or you can zoom out and macro view whatever you're looking at, as above, so below. So I started writing into my aura, and as I got better at seeing it, it stopped just being glowing light, and I could start to see the beginnings of structures and energy flows, and like, you know, kind of mixing of colors, and a second color showed up in my second band that really happens kind of out near my third band, and that's a really intense orange color. And when I'm doing projective stuff, you know, those, I think that's the energy I really use, and that shoots out in these prominences, like like sort of
Orange.
yeah. So my second band really is blue, but it's with orange as well. So everybody has a
Aren't these,
multiplicity.
just briefly, aren't these two colors? I mean, the one thing which reminds me of course, is orange would be just like, kind of related a bit to the sun, but mostly like second chakra, like growth. And, if it's about projection or manifestation, I can easily imagine that. And the other point being, isn't some type of blue actually a complementary color to orange, especially also in terms of advertising? I'm thinking of Visa and all these kind of things. Doesn't blue
Well,
and orange go together quite often?
they do, and they go together because they create a really interesting mix of energy. You get this combination of the hot projection with the orange and the cool receptivity of the blue. And they wind up working, for me anyway, in this really kind of cool circular vortex that winds up being really useful for me. I use it all the time, every day. So what's really cool in there is being able to use your mirror to start attacking your own astral practice, and being able to open up your vision to being able to see your own aura. And I diagnose things that are health issues I should be aware of, and your aura will tell you so many details about where you're at physically and emotionally and mentally that you don't get in any other ways. And when you address stuff from an auric perspective, like we've talked about this before, but in the second band, people, the negative emotions are super strong: worry, fear, anger, grief. And when you're like, you've got something you want to worry about, or you're super mad about something livid, you wind up making little chunks, little marks in your second band, wherever that's focused, and left unchecked and left uncleansed, though. And if you continue to stew about that issue, that you pour energy into those things, and those things grow. They get weird little ganglia, little hair-like things that come out and grow down through your second band down into your first band. And then once they go through your first band, then you've got illness, you've got cancers, you've got all kinds of things that are, it usually goes to wherever your first weakness is, and that's how that manifests there. But if you can keep your aura really clean, and you can address that on a frequent basis, you keep a lot of that stuff, almost all of it, away from you, and you don't have to wear that. So that's one of my top uses for mirrors. The second favorite is using it as a doorway to go astral travel and to go from place to place. Oh, before we go on that, did you have you ever had any of those same practices? Have you ever tried seeing your own aura in a mirror?
Well, actually, I mean, my own, I guess, also. I have some distinct memories, even though I can't tell you when or what exactly, when I would say I very much have seen this type of first band, maybe a few years back or something, when I was like deliberately focusing on it. Sometimes it can also happen kind of randomly, or when I'm in a slightly shifted space, and then you focus on these edges of the skin, basically. So that like first glow layer, I would say now I have seen quite a few times, and of course, and wonder, what is it? Is it that? And why is it only like this faint glow of light? But of course, just as you described, this is just the very first thing you see. And aside from that is, I mean, it's kind of an not so comparable experience, but with DMT or with ayahuasca. What I believe I saw, it was just very brief, but very interesting. There was not so much auras, but I would say, and then it's difficult because in these states, especially if you're not used to having these perceptions in a waking state, it gets easy to say like, oh, my mind is constructing this. And rather than saying this is just what I perceive energetically, and it is what it is.
That's my main issue with trying to do serious practice in that state.
Right. So just briefly, what I saw there, a few things are many things during the vision, of course, but let's say in the outside, I was at some point briefly looking to my left when another participant like was coughing and he seemed kind of sick. And I believe now I actually saw him like energetically, and I saw something like, you know, red or whatever in his lungs or something like this. And the other vision I had, not so much again auras, but looked really cool. I had like the impression of, even with closed eyes or something, seeing an individual and then have like laid on top of them hexagrams, which are now like, you know, really stylish in all kinds of advertisement. Even I think the Austrian military is using hexagrams now, and games and hexagrams are everywhere. So, but this was a few years back. So, see this like silhouette, but full of hexagrams. And I could see like that these hexagrams would show different ideas of information about health. So I was like, oh, wow, this is like a really cool, like auric health interface to read someone. I only like got a glimpse of what the template would look like. I didn't really get to use it, but that was cool enough. And the one other thing, again, this kind of like in between thing, but at some point also pretty early within that journey, one girl I think started crying and cried the whole time through. And just as that kind of happened, like there were many helpers and quite a few of them went there, and I could see one of them like standing in front of her, and he was, in my impression at least, like pulling up some kind of an auric field, because they are also all, at least, let's say, you know, Reiki masters or whatever, or putting up some, I don't know, barrier or protection or something. And in that moment he's pulling it up, I'm closing my eyes again, because you're supposed to have your eyes closed, even though if there's commotion. And I again could say that I actually saw, in a sense, how he was like drawing up a wall of light or something like that. Yeah. So these are not maybe specifically, aside from the first expand related to the aura, let's say from the direction that you're approaching it, but it may be some glimpses, let's say, from the other side.
Right. So the next one I wanted to talk about was using it for astral travel. You know, it is a great doorway to move through into other spaces. And it's kind of great because you can, I notice a lot of people have kind of a hang up about traveling astrally because they think they won't be able to get back to their body. And
Right.
one of the early tricks that James taught me actually was to, you know, you can light up the surface of the mirror with your energy. Like for me, I make it a really crispy blue, so you're not really seeing, you're maybe just seeing a shadow or an outline of the reflection, but the surface is really this kind of electric blue field that you're looking through. And you can take you can attach a little thread of energy from your solar plexus to the mirror and then walk through the door. And then you're always connected with that thread, which seems to allay the fears of some people just first getting into
Right.
it.
I
I don't like being tethered at all, but it's a really good one if you're afraid you're not going to come back.
As far as I know, in the book, maybe even you recommended it, Astral Dynamics, which at least I read and practiced a bit, but at least for me, it wasn't really the way to go further. But from what I could grok is that this kind of idea, I think even Bashar talks about it, of a silver cord or like this connection to the body actually is permanent. And as long as you're anyhow incarnated, can't really be severed or disturbed or anything. But I guess that the practice you're outlining just helps that the conscious mind is aware that this is happening.
I think that cord idea is, I don't think you're actually attached. Your body is there. It's like doing stuff. And I think the attachment is your intent to go back, and
Right.
that's the thread, as long as you have the desire to go back and you focus on going back, you will. No question.
Yeah. And I guess maybe the mix-up could also be because then individuals think about the astral realm or the astral consciousness state from a physicalized state, including all the fears and worries and self-doubts and so on. However, on the astral level, when you're actually traveling, of course, you have a much different awareness and other possibilities.
And I don't know about you, when I'm doing that, I have this feeling of wonder, and there are infinite frequencies to go explore, infinite realms, infinite universes, infinite places to go, and that just lights a fire under the explorer in me. I love to just go explore some, especially new territory that I haven't read about or heard about anyone else going to. That's like a totally new experience, a totally new exploration of the beings that live there, the things, the way that world is constructed. That's such a wondrous adventure to me that I never travel in those spaces with fear. And the other good thing is, once you get your projective skills, those on the astral level, those are amplified so many times that you really don't have anything to fear. You're
exactly right.
You're kind of an adult with respect in that world. It's kind of curious. We're talking about the mirrors. Anyway, let me finish this one last one. I want to make this point about the Bryan book. So you charge that mirror up. One of the other things I would say to somebody that was just starting is, I at this point and for many years, I love to just dive in sometimes, not knowing where I'm going to go, and see where I wind up and explore that. That seems to be kind of a frightening scenario for a number of people I've interacted with. So I've made the suggestion, and it's worked pretty good, is that they kind of have a destination in mind before they go, and get used to the traveling and how that feels. And at this point for me, that's natural as walking down the street is in my physical body. It's not like a crazy, weird experience. It's part of my everyday experience. So, once you get to a point where you can have confidence that you can go where you want to go, and, you're not going to wind up in some scary, dangerous place, that helps a lot too. So once you have your mirror really supercharged up, and it's this glowing surface of energy, you take your energy and project it through the doorway, and pretty much you're there. And to that note, I wanted to bring up something on two levels. We were just talking about the aura and using the mirror for that. I used that as a tool right up until the time my teacher gave me that Bryan book. It's Ron Clark's The Bryan Companion, and the ability, the chapter in there on getting to the infinite depth point changed my mode of travel significantly, because at that point in time, no pun intended, instead of going through a surface or kind of leaving from here, you take yourself inside and find the infinite depth point, which is the infinite depth point for everything in the universe. And that space for me is black and bright, and like it's this place, it's like stopover place, that then from that moment of emptiness, all I have to do is decide where I want to go, and boom, I'm there. So I don't use a mirror for that particular thing anymore. I use the infinite depth point, which is a
Right.
really, really great thing. And then the other thing on the mirror, the best place to get, it's cool to see your reflection in the mirror, but your reflection is your reflection. And the best way to really view your aura is to take your consciousness out when you get your astral travel chops up and move your awareness out from your body and look back on yourself. And that's the best way to see where you're at. You can't take all of yourself or else your aura gets really dim. You want to keep your physical aura around your body really bright. But looking back at that from outside yourself is a really, really super useful tool.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Okay. Let's see. Did astral travel? Yeah. A mirror is also a really amazing place to launch a sigil from. There's as many ways to launch sigils as there are stars in the sky, but once you construct a really amazing sigil, you can go into the surface of the mirror, just like I suggested, making that for your own going through, but instead you load the sigil up onto that surface and then blast it out with a projective, like boom. And that's a pretty effective way also. So let's see here. Yeah, I think we got time for this. I wanted to go into a little bit about making a basic black mirror. And by the way, a mirror, a glass mirror, really cool. Strongly recommend a really good glass mirror. And if it has a little lead content in it, that's way cool. But there are as long as the surface is reflective, you can do that same scenario, like a still surface of water. Just for giggles, I did that a few nights ago out in the amazing full moon that was out. And, I had a nice little black pan of water out in the middle of the garden. And when the full moon was at its highest, it just lit up my garden almost like the light you get on an overcast day. It was so bright. And I was watching the moon in the surface of the black water. And that is a really amazing place, the water element being your emotions. If you're seeking for some emotional answer, a lot of people use that to ask questions about love and, relationships and that kind of thing. That's a really amazing tool to work with. And then there is a thing that is an old standard in most of the Western occult traditions, and that is creating a black mirror, so that you create a mirror, but that the surface of the mirror that you're looking at is black instead of silver and reflective. And it's super simple to do. You want to just get a really nice piece of glass. You can do it with a small 8x10, but the bigger. I always like bigger things, so there you go. So you get a really nice piece of glass and you clean it physically and energetically. One of the best ways to clean glass and mirrors astrally is just some really good white wine or white vinegar. It works amazing. It's super simple, and that's pretty much in everybody's cabinet. So you just wipe down both sides of the surface of the mirror, and you get some flat black paint that will stick to glass. And you paint the surface of the glass with a couple of coats so that it's nice and thick and there's no differentiation in the intensity of it. And let that dry so that when you flip it over, you're looking at the glossy surface of the glass, and through the glass you see the black. And then, people do make frames to go around the mirror, and you can, I've seen people do rune mirrors. I've seen people do sigil mirrors and putting symbols and, intent statements, whatever you want to, make the focus of this mirror be. You can add that to the outside of the mirror, and then you charge that thing up, and you are ready to rock. It's a really great little tool. I would also suggest that once you get your mirror charged up and really cleansed, if you've made a small one, an 8x10 one, wrap it up in a piece of silk when you store it. Don't let it just sit around. And you can also put it in a really nice big plastic bag and wrap that up too. Plastic's a really good energy insulator, and that'll keep it kind of good too. If you leave it sitting around for a long time, you're going to want to repeat the cleansing process before you go out. With the water scrying method I was mentioning, you always want to purify the water before you do it, and to bless and charge the water with light and good intent. And that's. Have you scryed, or have you used the magic mirror in any way, shape, or form?
I have, at least used mirrors in altered states a few times. It worked surprisingly well, but maybe the first punctuation events sometimes can be especially effective to actually, let's say, scry parallel versions of myself, which was a pretty fun experience. We can get into that, but if you wish. But before we do, just a brief question before I forget about it.
Sure.
What about basically all the screens we have everywhere? Because obviously, everyone probably right now, unless you're only listening, you're looking at something that actually almost looks like a scrying mirror or a black crystalline surface or something, which are all those LCD displays, potentially even TV displays. I'm not sure how much it is about, the contents in terms of minerals or whatever, but just in terms of coloration and reflectivity. What do you think about like LCD screens?
I think those are a horrible option for one reason. When you're making your own mirror, you are cleansing all the former energy out of that. And it becomes an empty vessel that then you're filling up with a specificity of intent, so that thing about at that time is only about that thing, and every part of that is part of the operation that you're working on. When you're looking at an LCD screen, it's always vibrating. It's got electricity and magnetism running through it. In this case, of
course, it would be turned off and so on. But still, of course, in terms of the generation of the process, maybe produced in China and so on, from that point of view, not the best energy, maybe.
I don't think you're ever going to be able to clean your computer of outside energy. I don't know that that's possible. Maybe it is, but I haven't experienced being able to do that. Because so much goes through it so fast. It's like, wow.
Totally. Just in any case, it's kind of interesting that we are actually using something that at least looks very similar to scrying mirrors to actually scry into different realities, especially with software and then with the internet. It is, in a sense, it could be seen as a form of, it obviously is a form of remote viewing,
Well, it's electronic astral travel.
Right. Of course, in a sense, it's a crutch and it's just tech, but it's also kind of cool because it also shows us that, anyone who has explored these realms to any degree basically will not be so interested in plugging themselves into the matrix anymore, as I always like to say, because of course, if we can see like, oh, all the wonders of the internet and so on and so forth, and that's all nice, but it's not even a fraction of the percentage of the, let's say, grandness of even just the first astral layer, let's say.
Pale by comparison. Yeah, in every way. Yeah, the internet is so much. I mean, things on the internet, like give you glimpses into other places, but it's the World Wide Web. It's so much
Right.
about this place, and
Oh, yeah.
and so I it's funny I just said that. I don't know if this is true or not, but maybe even just that my own perception of that kind of colors my feeling about wanting to use that for magical exploration. Be interesting to explore that a little bit and see what's up with that.
Yeah, who knows? Or who knows then, what particular astral layer matrix one can connect to then. I have no idea. I again just find it curious that as much as magic, as you mentioned, is externalized to fairy tales and so on and so forth, we're actually in a sense quite obviously using the same tools. So what I just want to get at kind of is everyone already is scrying through these mirrors, just they do it subconsciously and they say it's my computer and my screen, but it's also actually a variant of that. So I just want to kind of point that out, how
that's
prevalent
a good point. That's a
that
good
technique
point.
is, even though of course that's like in a sense technological crutch, if we put it in a negative sense, or just a lower density idea.
There are a lot of analogies like that, Raphael. It's kind of interesting that just where it's like if you think back 500 years and where society was there, science and technology and magic and creativity were leagues apart. And I think those things are rapidly blending together, man. I see that in so many ways, And I think a lot of people are kind of physically doing the physical interpretation of a magical act. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Right, yeah. Here we go. That's what it is.
The mirrors thing has been so prevalent in my life that it's like all my images. Like I started about 20 something years ago, like taking my photographs and mirroring them and flipping them in halves and connecting them back together. And man, you find some interesting doorways that way. Well, that's the way the tarot deck, most of the tarot deck was done. And man, a really, really fruitful area. So I'm hooked on the mirrors, man. That's one of my favorite little go-to tools.
Yeah, I think symmetry is always great. And at least also for me, even some subconscious, let's say, self-reflectivity instances that I can remember from like way back actually happened not too seldom or usually in front of mirrors. So there's certainly, something very interesting about them. Many interesting things about them.
And the willingness to master self-reflection is one of the prime tools for actually being able to evolve yourself. Looking at the things that you're about yourself that you don't want to acknowledge. Having the chutzpah to move through those and find ways to deal with them and process all of that. Really very, very useful in growth and evolution. So there you go. I guess that's my spiel on mirrors. So any other questions?
Just one reference that comes up for me. I'm not sure to what extent this is canon or not, but there is a movie which is called Alice Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah,
and I don't know if that's also based on a book.
With Johnny Depp.
Yeah,
it's loosely based on the book. It's kind of like what's his name? Tim, the guy that did
Tim Burton?
Yeah, exactly. You know, he did a version of Dark Shadows, you know, and that it was loosely based on the book, but yeah, kind of cool.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, we can wrap it up here, or if there's any more ideas you would wish to lay out, or anything else, any more stories, or any other topic, maybe even that is connected that you may wish to touch upon.
You know, I think for today we're good. I'm really happy with what got sent out today. It's actually some really
great.
good tools. You know, I hope people latch on, and there's a soul or two out there that'll give it a try and see where it goes. Find their sense of adventure and go on an exploration.
Definitely. And as you have said, as above, so below. And then we could also say that anyhow, the entirety of reality is nothing but a hall of mirrors. So maybe even that
So
shift in
true.
perspective can then, accelerate it. And for all of those who are inspired to, in this way, go through the looking glass to explore more of themselves in many different ways, I would say we already are sitting, in a sense, within the holographic looking glass or something along those lines. The one analogy that came up yesterday, maybe you're familiar with it, and it also reflects this mirror and holographic idea, is Indra's net, or maybe even you actually brought it up quite a few shows back.
Yeah, I am familiar with that. Yeah, it's a cool little place. It is. I don't have much to elucidate about that right at the moment, though.
That's perfectly fine. So yeah, here it just says Indra's net, a metaphor used to illustrate the concept of emptiness and dependent origination and interpenetration. Yeah. So as above, so below, as within, so without. Enjoy the holographic universe. So thank you so much, Bryan, for this particular.
My pleasure as always, and again, my gratitude to you and Okitalk and to everybody out there listening. So thank you very much.
Resonant edition. Thank you so much, and thank you all for listening. Enjoy yourselves.
Radio